We're nearing the end of the year and it's annual performance review time. How are you feeling? Are you dreading it, or are you just straight up annoyed that you even have to do it in the first place? Be honest. I would understand if you fall into either of these camps, because again, it's just another thing that you're expected to do without very much guidance. So trust me when I say I get it. But as someone who's helped hundreds of managers to effectively lead some of the hardest conversations, I'm excited to share with you some valuable insights that will make your upcoming annual review a breeze. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the common mistakes managers make that leads to having a useless or even a harmful review, how you can prepare for one like a pro, and what makes a performance review truly effective. So let me ask you, have you ever been on a receiving end of an amazing performance review? I know I have. It feels so great, right? To be acknowledged for your hard work and your effort. You know, my students send me screenshots of their own performance reviews quite often, and it's easy to see that it means so much to them. But I would argue that the impact of a really good performance review actually goes beyond simply just being a confidence boost, right? Because when it's done right, a performance review allows space for open dialogue, alignment, feedback, and goal setting, which is all extremely important facets for improved performance. So it is transformational for the team member because it lays this really great groundwork for a successful upcoming year. So rather than seeing this as just another thing that you have to do on your plate, I want you to view this as a truly transformational event in the performance journey of your team member. In fact, I gotta say, I've seen managers redirect team members to a much better path as a result of the annual review. So if you're dreading it right now, or kind of just viewing it as simply another checkbox item, I really wanna encourage you to go into it differently this year. Let's make a goal today that you're gonna give this one your all. Because I guarantee you that your mindset going into it will dramatically impact the results. Okay, so now that you and I are in the right frame of mind, let's talk through the tactical components of the review, shall we? Because there is a big difference between a poorly executed review and a transformational annual review. For example, have you ever been on the receiving end of a review where maybe you felt rushed through your review as if your manager had maybe more important things to do, or where the conversation was superficial and just lacked any depth? Or have you ever felt or left a review feeling deflated, as if your manager only focused on your weaknesses and overlooked your strengths as well as your contributions? Or have you ever felt like the review was like a generic template that was full of vague feedback and your manager maybe doesn't even know what you do with your time? Well, if you've experienced any of these things, it's evident that the manager made all of the common mistakes that I see. By number one, devaluing the review. That's not making time for it, right? It's clearly deprioritized. Or number two, just using the generic HR template that gets sent out without trying to infuse transformation into the agenda. And then number three, looking only backwards and not seeking to look forward or seeking to look for opportunities to build growth into the upcoming year. These are some of the most common mistakes that I see. And if you've made these mistakes yourself, it's all good. Because like I said at the beginning, this year, we're turning a new leaf. And the key to that is just good preparation, because the better prepped you are, the more effective and more transformational your review. And I actually have a really great process for you that you can use. In fact, I would recommend, or I would suggest, that you save this video and just come back to it when you're ready to dive into your review. Okay, so here's my 3-step process that will help you to prepare in a meaningful way so that your reviews become this vehicle for creating a roadmap for building a high-performance team over the next 12 months, okay? So step number one, communicate upfront, right? Clearly provide framing and appropriate messaging for your review. Now, the purpose of this communication is so that your team members know what to expect, as well as how they can get the most out of the review process. Because if they've had experiences like I referenced earlier in the past, then that can actually play into the mindset of how they show up. So it's important for you to communicate to them what you want them to know about this event and how you intend it to be different and conversational, rather than it being a grading system. So my recommendation to further support this framing is to share just a handful of self-evaluation and reflection questions so that you guys can have an in-depth conversation. Plus, it's just gonna demonstrate to your team member that you are doing what you intend to do, which is to make it conversational. My second recommendation is for you to announce this at like a team meeting where folks can hear your tone and see your enthusiasm, and then follow it up with an email for clarification. Step number two, Prepare to adapt your approach. Yes, while the review might be standardized, your approach should not be, right? Instead, it should be tailored to your team members by meeting them where they are. So here's a strategy that I found really helpful in helping me to tailor my approach. It's called the bucket strategy, where you take your team members and group them based on the following categories, right? So number 1 is the high performers, number 2, inconsistent performers, and number 3, underperformers. Now, fine point here, right? The purpose of this categorization is not to label your team members, but instead to narrow down your focus, because what we found is that it helps you to determine what each person needs from the review, right? So how you can tailor the review so that they can walk away with like a clear plan of action for the upcoming year. So here's a little cheat sheet in terms of the approach and focus of the conversation, just depending on the category. So for the high performers, we want to focus on stretch goals that challenge them and career progression. And then for our inconsistent performers, we want to focus on strategies to help them maintain their consistency. And for our underperformers, an action plan for helping them to meet expectations. So those would be the 3 buckets of focus. Now, step number 3 is to create an annual roadmap based off of the review. You see, by the time you finish the review, each team member should be very clear on what they should focus on and do in order to be successful. After all, that was the entire promise of the review. So let's fulfill that by crafting a roadmap for the upcoming year that clearly documents goals, strategies, focus, and expectations, as well as some quarterly pulses along the way. Personally, I recommend collaborating with your team member on this and then just putting it into a project management tool or putting it into your one-on-ones that you have on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, so the two of you are consistently talking about what matters. Like I said at the beginning, right? This approach is absolutely going to make a sizable impact in how you conduct the review and in how your team members receive it. So please do try it out. But here's the thing, right? This entire process is based off of the assumption that you have absolute clarity on your goals and how to track them. And if you don't have those in place as a foundation, none of what we cover today will even work. In fact, it could lead to confusion and compromising the trust that you worked so hard at building with your team. So if you really want to know how to nail your next annual performance review, then make sure you watch this video here next.